Da, 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 da. So excited for this one. Good morning. This is, I believe, this is the November workshop for the Society of Advice. Let's welcome our guest, Ben Katt. Ben's work was introduced to me actually by a member of the Society of Advice. The reason I'm excited to have Ben is that he's really spent decades helping, well, first of all, going through a process himself, which never ends, I'm sure, of discovering his own purpose and then helping other people align their lives, discover their own purpose and align their lives. And that's sort of my favorite definition of real financial planning is aligning your use of capital with what's important to you, right? And both sides of that Venn diagram turns out are a lot of work. Like figuring out what's important to you is a lot of work, which is why I was excited to have Ben on. Ben, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Carl. Good to be with you all today.
Yeah. Let me just throw this question out before I dive into questions for Ben. What good is a financial plan if it doesn't help somebody reach this sense of purpose? Right? Like, what good is a super incredibly efficiently designed, well designed, high efficient portfolio if you don't have goals defined and it doesn't help you meet the goals? Turns out it's pretty hard to define those goals. And so, Ben, let's talk a little bit about purpose. Why do you think purpose matters so much?
I think purpose is fundamental to who we are. So, we often ask these big questions. Who am I? What comes right after that? It's often, why am I here? Who am I and why am I here? And both of, I think that's essentially one question. To be who we truly are, we also need to give expression to why we're really here, to what we're about.
Mm.
And And alongside that, I would say, and I love how you set it up, like your point here is to help, as is mine, help everyone here, all these financial planners kind of get clarity about your purpose or feel more connected to it. And then the purpose of everyone here, hopefully, is to share that concern for their clients, right? I think that captures something that is essential to the nature of purpose, which is it's always something that is moving beyond, it's moving us beyond ourselves towards others into community, into service, into belonging, and a sense of human flourishing. It's bringing up the image to me which is all these people who come to you and they've accomplished incredible things, and then they come with what is a profoundly existential question, which is like, is this all there is? And so that question immediately puts us in the territory of heart. Like that's a heart question. That's something that's beyond. I mean, you could say, I mean, like when someone's asking that, they're not looking for some scientific or like quantum physics explanation of the universe. They're talking about some sort of inner yearning or longing for more or gap between what they've achieved and a deeper sense of fulfillment. And I don't think there's any way to seriously wade into those waters without bringing forward that softer side of things, that without turning the lens on the inner life or talking, even using terms of heart. I think if you're working with clients or anyone you're with, that's where you want to be meeting them. Not that they're going to open up like the deepest depths of their soul to you, but we want to realize that I'm seeing stuff in the comments too. There's motivations, there's hopes, there's dreams and desires people have. And if we can't connect with them on the level of why,
Mhm.
um, and by the way, not really judging the why, that's for them to know. But if we can't connect with them at that level in some way, then I don't think we can really serve anyone.
Yeah, there's some really good stuff in the comments. And I wanted to just mention nobody walks into a financial advisor's office saying, "Can I cry on your couch?" Or "Will you please take your shoes off?" Right? What they came for was the spreadsheet and calculator. And I think it's the giant righteous trick of this group. Now, some of you are better at being more direct about that in your marketing, sort of more life coachy in your marketing than others. But there is a giant righteous trick of this group, and righteous tricks are good, just to be clear, for those of you who are new. That's very different from bait and switch. A righteous trick is always in service of the client. The giant righteous trick is this idea of meeting them where they are, right? With a present, we call it a presenting problem. Like they came into you because they need life insurance because they're going on a trip for the first time and they realize they have two kids. And the giant righteous trick is greeting them with empathy at that problem, even though we know that that's just the big, that's not the real thing we're solving for. And it may take 18 months to get them to the point where they realize, wait, right? Like they start using words to their friends about their relationship with you, like, I don't worry anymore, or it helped me get more clear about what's important to us. But those were never the questions they came with, right? And so I think that curiosity and listening, I think, are the superpower of this group, like cultivating a practice of curiosity. From your experience, Ben, what makes someone a good listener? And let's make it as simple as possible because this is actually really hard for most of us, like learning how to be a good listener. What practically would you do? You're sitting across from a client. The client says, I need $5 million in a sailboat. You're going to start digging into that a little bit because how cute, $5 million in a sailboat. You saw that on Instagram. Of course, we wouldn't ever say that, but that's what's going on in our heads. We're going to dig in a little bit. What makes that first meeting where we're trying to discover a sense of purpose at the end? What practically can we do? Like what posture, what do we do
Yes.
to be seen as a
Yes.
really good listener?
Well, I mean, I think eye contact is critical, which is, by the way, why I have a hard time with this medium sometimes. Like my camera's up here, I want to look Carl in the
Mhm.
eyes, and I gotta wait, this is the camera, but do you see my eyes right now? I mean, giving people when we're with them, like eye contact is absolutely powerful. It's like it's us communicating, my presence is here with you, right? So that's one thing. I think the kinds of questions we ask, maybe less yes questions that are like demanding a yes or no answer, right? And the kinds of questions that are more open-ended related to that. Follow-up questions. So when someone shares something, if we are truly, if we've been listening and we're curious, we're going to be able to ask a question after a question because they will have provided more, they will have given more of, you know, what they're about or what they're passionate about, what they're interested in. So those are some initial ones. I also think, there's some sense, there's all sorts of body language things, but I tend to be pretty animated with people. I think if we present ourselves, we're just really now don't fake and like act, right? But if we're stiff, there can be something kind of off-putting about that. Like
Mhm.
maybe we're either intimidating or we're not like creating a setting where they can relax and you know tune into maybe what's really going on within them and what they want to be talking about.
Do you have even like a little ritual, a way to remind yourself, like before you came on, just a simple reminder, a ritual, maybe even a slight little mindfulness practice, help you show up in a way that you'll be more present?
Yeah, well, there one thing I did is this was like about an hour before our call, I took a little time just to write some thoughts down. I mean, this is a topic that's really meaningful to me, and I could just show up and talk about it.
Mm,
But I wanted to be there's a way, even just for a few minutes, of like honoring the invitation to be here and the
mm,
fact that I really do enjoy talking with you and that together we're all going to be creating something. And
mm.
so I just jotted a few like what is on my heart, right? What's on my heart today as it relates to this theme?
What came up?
About 2 years ago, I started volunteering in hospice care, so end of life care. So every week I spend time with people who are dying. And so what was on my heart this morning was um, there's a woman named Bronnie Ware who was end of life care nurse, palliative care nurse in Australia, and she wrote a blog post years ago that blew up, and then it turned into a book. But it's about the five regrets of the dying, the
Mm,
five regrets of the dying, and she talked about the most common regrets that she heard voiced at the end of life, and that's that someone in the comments earlier was writing about end of life. And the first one, there's two that I was like, oh, I want to share these if it comes up, right? I'm not going to force it. And the number one regret is I wish I'd had the courage to
mm.
live a life true to myself, not the life that others expected of me. I wish that I had the courage to live a life true to
Mm,
myself, not the life that others expected of me. The
please.
second most common regret, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. And behind that often was a desire to be more present to loved ones, family,
Yeah.
friends, to go on trips, to do things, other things you're interested in. Yeah, I mean, those are both really kind of catch you in your tracks, you know?
It's so interesting to me that that's settled doctrine at this point. Do you know what I mean? Like we know that's what people are going to say. And then we just go right back to doing the same thing we've always been doing, like building our lives based off some Instagram version or what our parents thought we should do, because no one takes the time to help us clarify. And so the positive side of this is like, who gets this job? The job to actually, like, with implied permission, not necessarily explicitly stated permission, but implied permission. Your job is to help people rediscover or uncover for the first time who they really are and what they really want, and then help them align over a period of decades their use of capital with those things. I don't care what they think your job is. That's what your job is.
Yeah.
Right now, the question is just slowly doing it in a way that works, or we sometimes joke like either a punch in the face or an empathetic hug. Some people we can just go right at it. Right. So super, super
Yeah.
good.
Well, I think we live in our society as a poverty of curiosity. And so my wife is a therapist, and I in my line of work, like we are people who are always asking questions. This is what we do. We ask a lot of questions. This is our work. This is how we are in relationship. And it's amazing. So we moved to a new place like 4 years ago. So they're like going into new settings and meeting new people and being like coming home and we'll look at each other and because we're so aware of this, it's like not a single person asked me a single question.
Mhm.
And we're kind of used to the role so we can be in conversation and like we are genuinely curious about people. So in a sense, I think we're at a place where we don't feel the deep need of that. We don't feel slighted. We have each
Mhm.
other. We have community in other places that demonstrate and express that curiosity. But yeah, I
Mhm.
think it's really it feels really good when we're asking questions. And that's not like, oh, I'm patting myself on the back, but people are suddenly like a fire hose and they're sharing things with us that
Mhm.
like they're not talking about anywhere else, even in their own marriages probably. And I don't mean like super private things, but just kind of more kind of but yeah, deeper, kind of more meaningful things.
Yeah, it's really good. I've got another 2 pages, but I'm actually sort of curious. Anybody have a question? Liz, tell us what's on your mind.
So what I've noticed as I've started to get really quiet with myself is I have a lot of insight and I have these um sometimes they're whispers, sometimes they're intuitions, sometimes it's just something that comes to me. And then I'm like, oh yes, this is the thing. And as I start charting my path towards that thing, I realize, oh, it's not quite that thing, it's this other element of it. And so as I'm doing that, I'm working it out with the people around me, be it my spouse, my family, my coworkers, but I'm also just curious how you navigate the charting towards a purpose when the people around you are witnessing and reacting however they react, whether it's a
Hmm.
cheer or a question or a why would you ever do that? Like maybe you should stop. Or I'm really uncomfortable with the way that you talk about whispers coming to you, et
Mhm.
cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
Yeah, I love this question. I guess I would say it's like I don't want to be cautionary, but I do think it's important to, the more comfortable you are in sort of following your own intuition, your own being in tune with your inner knowing. Um, the reality is like a lot of people either they don't get that or they don't function that way or they're not comfortable hearing you talk about it. We'll just name that. And so, hopefully you have a few people in your life who can be those kinds of, or you have spaces or communities that can be those spaces where you can share some of those things. Um, but I don't I wouldn't broadcast it to everyone because sometimes what that can do, it can work against what we really want, and the external noise can start to subtly make us suppress kind of our own inner knowing in terms of what we're moving towards. And so sometimes it's not even telling anyone. It's just kind of going with those subtle impulses, following them. And then when you look back, sure, then there's maybe more people you can kind of tell the story to. But ultimately, you don't own an explanation to anyone for how you are moving through the world and what you are doing. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
Thanks, Liz. Let's wrap up on this one thing, Ben. Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do that. Because what the world needs is more people who are alive. I paraphrase that a little bit. Wrap us up with that Howard Thurman quote and why it was so important to you.
What I want to say about it actually is really asking the question of your why does not mean, oh, actually, I need a whole new career. I need to go do something else. Right. So, in this idea of what makes you come alive, which Howard Thurman is talking about in that quote, so you're in your work. Just make sure you're also asking, what else makes you come alive? What makes you come alive in the job you have? What makes you come alive as you're, coming alongside your clients? And what else makes you come alive? And make sure you're not just doing that thing that makes you come alive through your job, but you're having other expressions of this. This is the way to give a fuller, more dynamic expression to your why is by having essentially other outlets for it. And yeah, what might happen is maybe you get to a point where it has some implications for the work or job you do. But let's not put all the pressure on the job to be the channel by which we're expressing our purpose. There can be this beautiful interplay between work and all the other spaces in our lives, relationships, hobbies, communities, projects, etc. That if we're allowing ourselves, the multidimensional nature of who we are to be expressed in all these ways, the benefit goes across all those areas. And we're going to see it impact how we show up in our jobs with our clients. And it will give them permission to tap into their purpose in that way too.
Cheers. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Carl. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Okay, so Carrie, if you had to sum up today's workshop in terms of what you took away, what's the one thing? Let's pretend like somebody was sitting outside the door when you finished and you came out and they said, "Oh, what was that all about?" What would you tell them?
I guess what's coming to mind is like we're all sort of almost keeping it a secret that we're human. Like, but,
Right.
but there's also like a need to establish trust first. I think that's the big thing of just like, hey, you're human, right? Like we're kind of whispering to each other, kind of needing that connection, but there's also a feeling of like, well, how human can I be? Is it safe? And how can
Right.
I make it safe for you to be human in front of me?
Yeah. It's interesting. We didn't talk much about the safety issue. I've become more aware over the last 5 years as I've run around encouraging everybody to be real. I've been reminded by multiple people, especially people who don't necessarily look exactly like me, right? That sometimes it's not safe, right? Like sometimes it's not safe to be real. And I have deep empathy for that and wish I had a solution other than let's just keep seeing where the edge of that is and keep ourselves safe. So thank you. Joanne, what would you say was the most practical thing that you left with today?
Well, it- for me, it's just like really trying to listen, really trying to just let the clients be where they are in their space and not trying to jam stuff down their throat. Like I'm a CPA, I've got a lot of numbers. I need to give them some numbers, And I remember Amy Mullen's quote, advice kills conversation.
Hmm.
I mean, we are in the advice business, but I think there's a fine line. It's a really you have to have a high EQ for this job. You really, you have to be able to kind of be reactive, let them sort of their energy sort of dominate the space. I get torn about this because I use the money quotient tools and I really bring in the qualitative from the very beginning. And I've had one person just shut down and he won't come back to the meetings. But everybody else
Mm,
loves to open up.
mm,
So I know that these questions, having them tell us more, having to tell us about memories, how they like to invest their time and their energy, I know they're powerful. I
mhm.
just have to be, this just keeps reminding me that like it's an art. Like I just have to keep working at it with different clients and just letting it be and letting it unfold. I think it's very powerful though. And
Yeah.
this just reinforced it for me.
Dave, what do you say to that?
I think that was really well said by Joanne. And, I think another takeaway for me is reflection on, my relationships with clients who we serve, and the best relationships are the ones we've been able to build that connection with. I think that's like Joanne, I think you hit it, the EQ part of it too, about being able to identify those opportunities. And, it's something that I've been thinking about with these few different clients. Like, and did I miss an opportunity to get in there? And like when they open the door, or like, did I, thinking about conversations going back, I actually just went back in some notes with a family I met with last week. And this one, I just haven't connected with him, and like, gosh, am I missing something? Or I gotta like, just being, maybe there were, maybe he gave me the opportunity. I just missed it. I don't know. Like I gotta, so.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. I think like today would be a good example, just to, as an illustration. If I hadn't have asked Ben about what was on his heart when he said, before I sat down, I thought about what was on my heart, and then he just moved on. If I hadn't have asked that, I would actually be thinking today about like, oh man, I missed that.
Mm.
I missed that. And so I love the idea of like being really intentional about the never-ending quest for the perfect interaction. That pursuit's really beautiful. So Ryan, what comes to mind for you? Like, what's one thing you'll do differently, or at least you'll try to do differently as a result of today's workshop?
Yeah, so one is a good question because there are three big takeaways, but I'll answer the question. I love the response about listening and how good listening is letting go of the outcome, which is so interesting because I've always thought of myself as a good listener, but my outcome intention is always so that I get a clear picture of their values, or so I get they'll get a really good, um, you know, foundation for the conversation, or even so that they like me and they think that I'm more intentional than other advisors that they've spoken with. So I just got to make sure I ask a good question because that'll take care of itself. And I'm just going to create the space. And I think even for me, the freedom of letting go of that outcome in of itself and just being present in the answer was amazing for me. Because it was like, oh, I've thought this thoughtful approach to asking a really good series of questions that build on each other. But when I am able to let go of that, I'm like actually really curious about what they're going to say next, rather than just like, okay, that's really good. I could see how this would fit in really well on their one-page financial plan or something like that. I'm just being like, wow, that's amazing. And then thinking about like letting the reflection and putting it together happen after the fact, not in the moment. I think that was a really powerful takeaway for me.
That's really great. Very cool. Joanne, anything to wrap us up with?
One thing that I would get a little confused about is we want to bring our true selves to the table, but how much of ourselves do we interject? We have such limited time that we're with clients, and we really want to get to know them and understand them so that we can help them, help guide them to follow their own passions and value systems and everything, which we talked about today. But so how much of ourselves are we really putting out there? Like, you know what I mean? Like they don't want to hear about my whatever, even though I want to be real with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, if we had more time, I would ask all of you what you think. It's such a great question. I always have assumed it's all about like they're the hero of the story. I think that's the correct approach. We want to keep our values off other people's plans. But Dan and Chip Heath wrote something really interesting. I can't remember if it was in Made to Stick or Switch or Moments or something, that there is some level of mutual exchange involved in trust. And even in a guide hero relationship, And so I don't know the answer. I've been troubled by that too. Like,
Mhm.
because I used to think none,
Mhm.
like it's not about me ever. But Dan and Chip's work, which is probably at least 10 years ago that I first read that I've been thinking about the same thing.
Mhm.
And I think that idea of like, how much of me, how do I show up safely?
Mhm.
How do I create the space? What's the right checkers, chess, beautiful dance, whatever metaphor we want to use?
Mhm.
Let's just live into that for a bit. Greetings, it's Carl. What you just watched was a highlight from this month's Society of Advice workshop with the author and coach, Ben Katt. We went deep on this idea of helping ourselves and also our clients uncover a sense of purpose so that we can link our advice. And by the way, this has a massive impact on advice adherence, right? Helping your clients follow through. They follow through more often if they understand the advice is linked to what's important to them. In other words, their sense of purpose. So we dove deep on that, but that's not all we did. This month, we got really, really practical. This workshop was for advisors who want to build deeper, more lasting, more meaningful relationships with their clients. If you find yourself asking questions like this, how do I listen better? Like, how do I actually learn? What can I actually do to be better at listening? I mean, everybody says it, but what can I actually do so that I can uncover what really matters to my clients? How can I ask the right questions during a discovery meeting so I can truly connect? And this one was really interesting. How do I connect? How do I show up better, whether it's in person or in Zoom? We actually talked about some really simple, practical tips for being better on Zoom. If you ask questions like that, this workshop is you. Some practical things you'll leave with. You will walk away with tips and tricks. Dare I say hacks? Tips and tricks, practical tools on a couple of things. One, how to build stronger client relationships by being present and curious. Two, how to ask the kind of questions that uncover what clients truly want. Three, simple strategies to use in person or on Zoom to create trust and connection. Four, to align your work with your own values. Remember, that's actually really important. Want to be a better financial planner? Be a better human. So all the work we do at the Society of Advice is for us, maybe even first, so that we can then learn to take it with our clients, right? Those are the kinds of things you will walk away from this 90-minute workshop. These aren't just some like fluffy ideas. They're actionable steps that you can take to help keep your best clients, deepen those relationships, and grow your business, right? At the Society of Advice, we do this every month. We do a 90-minute workshop every month, focused on real challenges that advisors just like you face. Challenges around how to retain best clients, challenges around how to market and grow the business, how to talk about things like fees, right? How to have deep relationships so that clients will stick around so that we can make the kind of impact we all want to make. Workshops like this are what we do. Every month, 90 minutes. Count on it, right? And here's the best part. If that's of interest to you, you can come and see for yourself, right? When you join, your first month is free. And I want to be clear about something. That is not just a marketing gimmick. It's a chance for you to experience the full value for yourself. Come and see, right? If it's a good fit, you'll stick around and we would be thrilled to have you. If it's not of value to you, you simply cancel. High fives on your way out. It's no problem. If you join now, you'll get access to this recording, the recording that we just did that I just told you about with all those benefits. And you'll be allowed to attend our next live meeting, right? So you can dig into the tools and the tactics and the strategies that we covered in this meeting. So if you're serious about helping clients and growing your business, I think you'll love this workshop with author and coach Ben Katt. So just go to Ben Katt, excuse me. So just go to thesocietyofadvice.com. That's thesocietyofadvice.com. Join now, and your first month will be free. Cheers, my friends. See you on the inside.